Hello, hello, I'm Will. Are you ready for today's Bible story? It was the Sabbath, and Jesus was in the synagogue. A man who couldn't move his hand was also there. The Jewish leaders knew that God's law said not to do any work on the Sabbath. They watched to see if Jesus would heal the man's hand. Did Jesus heal the man? Let's watch and find out.
On the Sabbath day, Jesus went into the synagogue, a special building where God's people met together. The Sabbath day was a special day. God had told his people not to do any work on the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day was a day for God's people to rest from their work and to worship God. Jesus taught the people in the synagogue. One of the men in the synagogue had a problem with his hand. He could not move his right hand. The religious leaders were in the synagogue and they watched Jesus carefully. They wondered if Jesus was going to help the man by healing his hand. The religious leaders knew God's law said people should not do any work on the Sabbath, and they wanted to see if Jesus would heal the man. Then they could say Jesus broke the law. The leaders asked Jesus a question. Is it okay to heal people on the Sabbath day? Jesus asked the religious leaders a question. Maybe they could figure out the answer themselves. Jesus asked, if you have a sheep and it falls into a ditch on the Sabbath, would you leave it there? Or would you grab the sheep and lift it out of the ditch? That was an easy question. Of course they wouldn't leave the sheep lying in the ditch. They would lift the sheep out of the ditch. People who owned sheep took care of them. No one would want to let his sheep get hurt or die. Then Jesus said, a man is much more important than a sheep. So it is right to do good on the Sabbath. If you would help a sheep out of trouble on the Sabbath, of course you should help a person who is in trouble. Jesus knew that the leaders were hoping to catch him breaking God's law, but helping the man was not against the law. So Jesus called out to the man who could not move his hand, stand up here where everyone can see you. Then Jesus said to the man, stretch out your hand. So the man stretched out his hand. He had not been able to move his hand before, but now his right hand was just as good as his left hand. The religious leaders should have been happy that the man was healed. They should have praised God for giving Jesus the power to heal. Instead, the religious leaders were angry. They did not like Jesus or what he was doing. They left the synagogue and made a plan about how they might kill Jesus. Jesus healed a man's hand on the Sabbath, even though the religious leaders thought he shouldn't. Jesus showed that God gives us rules to help us, not to hurt us. The religious leaders made a plan to kill Jesus, but God planned to use Jesus' death to help people by saving them from their sin.
The Jewish leaders asked Jesus if it was lawful to heal on the Sabbath. This made Jesus angry and sad. Jesus knew they didn't care about the man or God's laws. They only wanted to trap him. Jesus did heal the man. Jesus' miracles proved that he is the Son of God. Jesus showed that God's laws were meant to help people, not to hurt them.